So nobody really saw Russia behaving in the way that Russia has behaved in 2015, did they? Nobody expected them to increase output particularly. What does that tell us about 2016 and what they can do there?
Well, I think you're absolutely right. Analysts were forecasting that Russian production would fall this year, not because of any decision that would be taken by the Russian government, but because the industry is very heavily reliant on aging fields in West Siberia, and it was felt that with low prices, the industry wouldn't be able to invest and natural decline would take over. It hasn't happened. We've had output growth. We've had new post-Soviet records in 4 months of this year. And it's noticeable that opinions for 2016 are changing. As recently as 2 months ago, the International Energy Agency was forecasting Russian production would fall by close to 100,000 barrels a day. Last month, it forecast that it would remain flat. Its latest report 2 weeks ago forecast that Russian output would grow in 2016 by a very small 20,000 barrels a day or so, but it's a big change around.
Lena, big players in the oil market trying to play for market share seem to have been the big theme of 2015, and we see the glut that ensued as a result. Do you see anything that changes that dynamic as we go into next year?
Well, as a macroeconomist, I suppose it is striking to observe that for so long oil has been a supply-side structural story, but it is traded as a demand-side market story through the policy reaction function. Of course, it is the expectations that the continued weakness in oil resulting from suppliers' desire for market share growth, as you rightly said, combined with that dollar strength, which is not least reinforced by factors that depress oil, such as deleveraging in emerging markets, oversupply in emerging markets in terms of industrial capacity, and of course the continuous deflationary pressures we have in the Eurozone that are keeping the ECB and the money pumping. So the weakness here is that, or the worry is that through the policy reaction function, the weak oil becomes its own driver of deflationary expectations, and of course global currency wars expectations that in turn creates this fear about dislocation of market pricing way beyond oil. So I'm worried about this being a catalyst for broader dislocation.
It does seem to permeate almost every conversation we have around this desk at the moment, what's happening in commodities. Julian, when you look at what OPEC has been doing, would you say that then their strategy of playing for market share has failed when you see what Russia has been doing in the US?
Well, I mean, you know, it's certainly an easy argument to make that here we are more than a year on, prices down at 11-year lows. That hardly seems like success. But I think one has to look at what the alternative was, and particularly what the alternative was for Saudi Arabia and the other Arab oil producers. And as they saw it, their only alternative was to cut production to maintain prices, which would have created the environment to allow another big year of growth in US production, so they would cut further and further and further. We have to remember that for the last 3 years, US output was growing at over 1 million barrels a day. Now it's flat.